Yeah, I've visited Ohio a couple of times. I just know that if you go OH, they all get really fired up and go IO at you. Hey, I'm Austin. At 240, we help teachers pass their certification exams, and today we're going to help you do exactly that. This video is going to prepare you for Subtest 1 of the Ohio Assessments for Educators. I'm just going to call that OAE from now on, Elementary Education Exam, and that's test code number 018. Now, the OAE education exam is split into two subtests. Subtest 1 covers reading and language arts, as well as social studies. Subtest 2 is a whole different test. It covers mathematics, science, the arts, health, and fitness. Each of these two tests have about 75 multiple choice questions. In this video, we're going to zoom in on Subtest 1. And we're going to cover three things today: what's on this test and how to study for it, the most likely concepts that are going to show up, and to wrap it up, we're going to look at a few practice questions. So let's jump right in. Now, the OAE Elementary Education Subtest 1 is made up of those two domains we just talked about: reading and English language arts, as well as social studies. Reading and English language arts makes up a little bit more of this test. It's about 62% of the exam. And social studies, a little bit smaller, 38% of the exam. Each of those two domains has a bunch of competencies under it, and that's going to give us more information about what's going to show up on the test. Okay, but check this out. Reading through a competency is a little tough. It's a little bit like reading fine print. See what I mean? Now, I just want to show you the most important things and how it's going to show up on the test. That's exactly what 240 is here for. We want to show you the highlights and make studying as easy as possible for you. Now, buckle up. We're going to jump into a key concept from each competency from both of these domains. Let's start with the biggest chunk, and that's going to be reading and English language arts. The first competency here is language development and emergent literacy. This competency covers how young students build oral language skills, as well as concepts of print and the alphabetic principle. An essential concept to know for this competency is the difference between phonological and phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is essentially a subcategory of phonological awareness. Phonological awareness encompasses the ability to recognize individual phonemes, syllables, and words, and phonemic awareness is the ability to hear and use individual units of sounds. Those are called phonemes. Phonological and phonemic awareness are strong predictors of early reading success. Students need explicit, direct instruction to develop these skills. So, you'll probably be asked about some strategies you can use to teach them. If you want some ideas, the 240 Study Guide has you covered. I'm going to take you inside the game so we can chat about an important tool. That important tool? L-Conan boxes, or you may know them as sound boxes. You can use them for lots of things. For phonemic awareness, they can be used for isolating and segmenting phonemes. As students say a word, they move a token into a box for each sound they hear. Once students are able to work with the sounds in words, they're ready to connect those sounds to their written symbols, which brings us to our next competency, actually. Competency 2 is all about phonics, word analysis, spelling, and fluency. That's a lot wrapped up into one idea, including all the strategies and skills students use to decode and encode words on their own when reading and writing. Right now, let's zoom in on fluency. That's an important part of this whole thing. Reading fluency is measured by three primary criteria. Accuracy is the reader's ability to correctly pronounce words, prosody is the ability to convey expression, and speed is the pace at which the reader reads the text. Be familiar with all three of these, and you'll need to know some strategies to support fluent reading in your students. The right methods will depend on which component of fluency a student is struggling with, but here's some general rules. It's going to be super important to make sure they're reading at a current level, the right grade level, and they have lots of opportunities to read out loud. One of the best things that a teacher can do to help their students develop fluency is to model fluent reading themselves. So when you're reading to the class, use an appropriate rate or expression in your voice. It's also powerful to read a snippet without fluency, so try reading way too fast, or too slow, or in too robotic of a voice. That'll help students hear the difference between fluent and non-fluent reading. Let's give it a try together. "Oh wow," said Liliana, "this is the best cupcake I've ever tasted." "Oh wow," said Liliana, "this is the best cupcake I've ever tasted." Okay, students, which one sounded more fluent? Or even just like a human being, right? Easy. Okay, anyway, let's keep rolling. The third competency in Domain 1 is comprehension and vocabulary. This covers the different kinds of comprehension and strategies for promoting students' comprehension skills. It also includes vocabulary development concepts and techniques for developing students' vocabulary, which is what I'm going to focus us on in this video. Vocab development refers to students' ability to effectively know and use words in their listening, speaking, reading, and writing. effective vocabulary development promotes comprehension and overall reading success. Now, oftentimes, vocabulary is learned indirectly through just regular conversational experiences, but sometimes you're going to need to teach those new words directly. One way that you might do this is by pre-teaching unfamiliar vocabulary from a text, like before the students get into that text. Teachers should provide ways to actively engage students with new vocab and help them understand the relationships between words. A great way to do this is by using semantic maps or word webs, like this one. We're comparing the homophones aisle and aisle. You can use semantic maps to visually display the meaning-based connections between a word or phrase and a set of related words or concepts. Need to brush up on the difference between homonyms, homographs, and homophones and all the rest of it? Don't worry, it's waiting for you in the 240 study guide. Are you ready for the next competency? You are? Well, of course I'm happy to show you. What's that? You like the beard? Thanks, babe. I'm going for the salt and pepper look. The fourth competency is the alliterative types of text, and that covers the characteristics of literary genres as well as the features of different writing styles. So basically, you need to be able to thoroughly understand and analyze these texts before you can teach them to your students. Makes sense, right? Part of analyzing texts across genres is knowing about different types of figurative language. Now, here are some types of figurative language that you'll need to be familiar with for this exam. For now, let's highlight these two because I know that they're likely going to show up on the test. First of all, symbolism. Symbolism is when an object stands in for an idea or a larger meaning. You're familiar with it. It's probably going to be used numerous times throughout a piece of literature. Examples would be like a dove representing peace or a snake representing evil. And the next one I want to go over quickly is metaphor. That's when an author compares an object or an action to something else which is not literally applicable, like life is a dance, or a family is a warm embrace, or this video is a lifesaver, and Austin is a salt and pepper angel. Look, remember, a metaphor is a direct comparison, and you're familiar with similes, right? That's a comparison that uses like or as to the same effect. So those were just two examples of figurative language that might come up on this test. To review all the others on the list, be sure to check out your 240 study guide. Okay, just one more competency left in Domain 1. Let's pump the gas and get into it. In the written and oral communication competency, you'll need to know the stages of the writing process, modes of communication, and proper conventions. I'm going to tell you all about the writing process first because it's really likely to come up on this exam. The stages of the writing process are pre-writing, drafting, revision, editing, and publication. Revising and editing can be really easy to mix up, so let's zero in on some details about those two. Revising entails reviewing the draft and making adjustments to improve the content of the writing. This is the time to make sure that the writing clearly addresses its purpose and the audience to whom you're speaking. Improvements to the organization and word choice are made here. Details are analyzed to determine if there's anything that can be added or deleted or changed or moved around to support the overall clarity of the piece. Editing also entails reviewing the draft, but this time we're focusing on improving the conventions of the writing. This is the time that we focus on proper grammar, spelling, punctuation, capitalization, and make any corrections that are needed. In simple terms, revising improves content and editing corrects conventions. And how about that? We just got through Domain 1, y'all. Let's shift gears from language arts to social studies. Okay, the first competency in the social studies domain covers government and economics. Okay, those are huge, sprawling concepts, but they're big, important pieces of this social studies pie. Now, we can't cover everything that you'll need to know about government and economics. I mean, there's literally entire college courses dedicated to like any idea within these, but let's go over an essential concept that you'll need to know. Don't forget, everything you need is in a 240 study guide. Subscribe below. For now, are you ready to get into the structure and functions of federal government? You are? With such enthusiasm, I really appreciate that. Okay, how about watching a video from the guide? I knew you'd say yes.
Articles 1, 2, and 3 focus on establishing and separating power in the government. By explicitly separating the government into three branches, the Constitution is able to keep any one branch or person in a branch from becoming too powerful. Let's discuss these two concepts more. In order to protect from corruption and a dangerous concentration of power, the Constitution separates the various powers of government into three distinct branches. The legislative branch makes laws, the executive branch enforces laws, and the judicial branch interprets the meaning of laws. This describes the separation of powers. To further protect against tyranny, each branch has the power to limit the power of the other two branches. For example, the judicial branch can check the legislative branch by declaring laws they pass as unconstitutional. This limiting is known as checks and balances.
Don't you just love studying with videos? Competency 7 covers US and world history. You'll need to know about significant eras and people throughout history, as well as social and political development, in addition to the processes that have shaped the patterns of human populations. And that's just to name a few, I know. Anyway, let's get into characteristics of civilizations, because that's definitely going to come up on the exam. We'll start out at the Fertile Crescent. Many of the most notable ancient civilizations developed in the Fertile Crescent, the area extending from the Persian Gulf to the southeastern coast of the Mediterranean Sea, and continuing from the southern coast of the Mediterranean around the northern Nile region. This region encompasses the Nile, Tigris, and Euphrates rivers, which provided water and generated fertile soil. Because the region was so fertile, it was conducive to agriculture. Therefore, societies were able to shift from hunter-gatherer to sedentary communities. The Fertile Crescent is considered the cradle of civilization because it was the birthplace of agriculture, urbanization, writing, trade, science, history, and organized religion. That's a ton. The Fertile Crescent includes the Mesopotamia region and ancient Egypt. Civilizations in the Fertile Crescent contributed to world culture and are directly responsible for the development of Western civilization. Examples include the Egyptians, Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and Phoenicians. If you want to dig into more details, and you probably should before the test, check out the study guide. It's going to give you everything. For now, we're almost done with the study guide. Let's get into our last competency. Competency 8 is all about geography and inquiry. This covers human and physical geography as well as working with visual tools like charts and maps. Let's dig into using maps right about now. Both maps and globes use a compass rose, which indicate those 4 cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west. That's going to orient you when using the tools. Maps and globes also use legends or keys to explain any symbols that you're going to find on that map or on that globe. The legend is going to contain the scale, which explains the relationship between the drawn distance and the distance in real life that it's representing. If you need to interpret a map on the test, pay careful attention to any legend or scale that's provided. We'll have some practice with this because in just a moment, it's question time. Okay, let's get into those practice questions we talked about. Let's start back at the beginning with Domain 1, that's reading and English language arts. Let's take a look at a question about development and emergent literacy. Which of the following students is demonstrating phonemic awareness? A student who can identify the number of words in a sentence that's read aloud, a student who can listen to the word sit read aloud and identify that the first sound is s. A student who recognizes that happiness contains 3 syllables. A student who is asked to name a rhyming word for sweep and says heap. This is the correct answer. The feedback feature in the 240 study guide tells us that phonemic awareness is the ability to identify individual sounds in a word, like knowing that sit begins with s. All the other choices here would fall under phonological awareness. All right, time for a question about fluency. Which of the following activities would best support students' work to improve their reading prosody? Participating in choral reading, reading independently, performing timed reading with a partner, participating in frequent formal reading fluency assessments. The right choice here is choral reading because the students will hear fluency modeled by the teacher and also receive the benefits of both rereading a text and reading it aloud. For the next one, let's check out one of those vocabulary questions. What might that look like? Mrs. Ader reads a book aloud to her students. She introduces unfamiliar words during the reading and wants to promote the students' vocabulary development after the reading. Which of the following activities would best support that goal? Write the unfamiliar words on the board and have the students use a dictionary to define the words. Have students draw pictures that illustrate the definitions of unfamiliar words. Reward students who use the words in class. Have the students read the story silently and write down any words that are unfamiliar. This is the right answer because it allows the students to think of the word in various contexts and scaffold that word into their existing vocabulary. Our next course on the menu is types of text, and I'll be serving that with a side of figurative language today. Bon appetit. Which of the following is an example of hyperbole? Ooh, hyperbole wasn't on the list of stuff that we went over, but let's give it our best shot. The sun smiled down on us as we walked to school. The test hangs over me like a black cloud. The turtle swam silently and slowly through the river. The line for the sail was 2 miles long. I'm gonna go with A. Oh, darn it. Okay, that's wrong. Good thing the question feedback feature in the 240 study guide showed me that this is actually an example of personification. So this is the correct answer. Hyperbole is exaggeration. Ready for a question about the writing process? What's that? You were born ready? I'm having the best time talking with you today. In order to practice the drafting stage of the writing process, a teacher might ask her students to do which of the following activities. Write for 5 minutes about a teacher-designated topic without worrying about structure or grammar. Using an existing piece of writing, change the setting of the story to include more dramatic elements. Swap essays with a classmate to check for grammatical errors. Generate a list of questions that they don't know the answer to but want to find out. A is our best choice. Participating in short, low-stakes free writing time would provide students with an opportunity to put pen to paper and practice writing paragraphs, which is exactly what we're talking about in the pre-writing stage. Domain 1, all done. Let's keep it moving on to Domain 2. Earlier, we got a preview of the types of information that you'll need to know about government questions, but let's take a look at how economics might show up on the test. In economics, the need to make choices arises due to opportunity cost, scarcity, producers, consumers. Scarcity is the correct answer here. If goods were not scarce, prices would be very low and we'd all be able to buy it. But since they are, consumers and producers need to make choices on how they spend their money. Let's see one about history. We'll stick with the ancient civilizations theme that we touched on earlier. Which of the following contributed to the Egyptian civilization's comparative success during the Bronze Age? This is the one we want. Consistent, predictable access to water helped ensure adequate food for the Egyptians. Social studies pro tip, water is a big deal. Okay, one more. Remember when I told you we'd practice answering a question about maps? Okay, that time is now. What amount of beach in kilometers does not have a reef? Notice that this map has a scale included. The perimeter of the island has a blue line around it labeled reef, except for the left near Alofi. This region is about the length of the scale marker to 6 kilometers, so 6 kilometers of beach near Alofi has no reef. And guess what? That's it. We've practiced a question from every single competency that's going to show up on the OAE Elementary Education Subtest 1. Congratulations on finishing this video. Thank you so much for joining me. Smash that like button, fam. I don't like that. Anyway, there's still much more to learn. We just skimmed the surface today. If you're ready to make sure that you're prepared for the OAE Elementary Education Subtest 1, take the next step and subscribe to your very own 240 study guide. It has hours of video so you can watch and or listen as you please. It's test aligned so you know precisely what you need to study, and it has hundreds of practice questions so you can be sure that you're ready when you walk into that testing center. And don't forget about the money back guarantee. Click the link below right now to get started. OHIO.